Beneath a heavy fog cloaking the Kryvyi Bridge, a silent pact between Beijing and Moscow advances. A convoy of 250 trucks, flying Chinese diplomatic flags under the guise of humanitarian cooperation, rolls forward. But overhead, an American satellite captures the truth hidden within: death. Concealed beneath crates of rice and medicine lie radar cores, drone microchips, and carbon fiber wings. $1.4 billion worth of weaponized deceit, bound for Russia's war machine. Miles away, deep underground, the Ukrainian Artificial Intelligence Command Center, SOVA-9, monitors everything. Its focus narrowed to one mission: SpectreNet. With clinical precision, SOVA-9 initiates the kill sequence. A swarm of kamikaze FPV drones, cheap, compact, and lethal, awakens. No words, no hesitation, only coordinates and a single encrypted command: attack. Now, 250 weapons trucks and their armed escorts were hurtling toward a storm they couldn't see. Can Russia's S-400 defenses and 3 Krasuka-4 jammers stop this wave of digital death? Or is this the night warfare changes forever? Let's find out. At exactly 3:42 a.m. on October 14, 2025, under a thick fog over the Dnipro River, a convoy of 250 Chinese diplomatic trucks rolled across the Kryvyi Bridge, a nearly 1.6-mile-long steel artery. The vehicles, covered in banners reading "Humanitarian Cooperation Mission," looked anything but benign. Hidden beneath tarps of fuel and barrels of medicine were radar modules, microchips, and carbon fiber drone parts, critical components destined for Russia's defense network. Satellite surveillance from the U.S. Space Command tracked the activity for 2 days, confirming that Beijing had quietly approved the transfer of $1.4 billion worth of dual-use military equipment. Each container truck carried enough electronics to assemble 40 attack drones or 2 complete radar stations. For Moscow, it was salvation. For Kiev, it was betrayal disguised as diplomacy. The convoy moved slowly, averaging just 18 miles per hour. Inside the lead vehicle, a Russian liaison officer calmly smoked a cigarette, convinced that the escort of 2 S-400 anti-aircraft launchers and 3 Krasuka-4 electronic warfare trucks made the route impenetrable. No one would dare attack a diplomatic mission, he joked over the radio. His words were lost in the static. Under the bridge, hidden from all radar and patrol drones, 20 AI-guided explosives clung to the steel bars like barnacles. They had been placed there 5 days earlier by Ukrainian special forces disguised as construction divers. Each device cost less than $700, and together, they had the power to wipe more than $2 billion in goods and people off the map. Above, the fog thickened. The truck headlights flickered in the mist like fireflies, bright, fragile, unaware. The bridge creaked under their weight, a faint metallic groan echoing across the dark river, and somewhere deep beneath the steel and the silence, a small green diode flickered once, then went out. The trap had been triggered. 400 miles away, beneath 165 feet of concrete and steel, the SOVA-9 Artificial Intelligence Command Center operates with silent precision. It is buried in an abandoned subway tunnel on the outskirts of Kyiv, a place where even GPS signals have disappeared. Inside, 20 Ukrainian analysts sit in a dim blue light, their screens glowing with live satellite telemetry data and encrypted radio conversations from the Dnipro Bridge. Every heartbeat inside that bunker is synchronized to a single operation: SpectreNet, a top-secret AI system built with joint US and British funding. It controls a fleet of 20 Kajak Reboth FPV drones, disguised as broken maintenance equipment. Each weighs just 10 pounds, but carries a 3-pound shaped explosive warhead capable of cutting through 2 feet of reinforced concrete. At $600 each, the entire swarm cost less than $8,500, about the price of a Chinese soldier's rifle scope. But together, they were capable of destroying more than $200 million in military assets in a single attack. For 72 hours, the drones lay dormant, powered by cryogenically melted microbatteries designed to operate for 4 years without maintenance. Their mission was simple but terrifying: wait for a single heavily encrypted packet from orbit, the equivalent of a sniper's trigger. At 4:12 a.m., one of the analysts, Lieutenant Melnick, noticed a change: a small spot on the thermal feed. The Chinese truck was slowing below 10 miles per hour halfway across the bridge. The tires, made of synthetic rubber, were failing from the sudden drop in temperature. That was exactly when the SOVA-9 predicted it would hit with a 94.3% probability. Target confirmed, the commander said, his voice calm but his eyes focused. On the screen, red icons flashed in the correct order under the shadow of the convoy. When it reached 0, the colonel gave an order. A line of code flashed. Execute 7, waiting for satellite signal. Somewhere across the Dnipro River, 20 sleeping drones opened their eyes. Could 20 stealthy drones controlled by an AI system hidden deep underground in Kyiv really penetrate Russia's most formidable defense system, the S-400? Or was Ukraine headed for disaster? Let me know what you think in the comments below. The night was silent, except for the hum of diesel engines in the fog. At 4:38 a.m., a convoy of 250 Chinese diplomatic trucks crept toward the center of the Dnipro River bridge. A massive steel monster built to withstand 90,000 tons of pressure. But that night, it would have to contend with something far beyond its weight: intelligence. Beneath the bridge, 20 AI-controlled drones awoke in unison. Their brushless motors buzzed, a distant swarm of metallic bees. Within seconds, they had split into 3 attack formations, controlled not by humans, but by the SOVA-9 artificial intelligence, operating hundreds of miles away in Kyiv. Then, the first crack in Russia's armor. Inside the S-400 command vehicle, Lieutenant Sergei Malenkov, 27 years old and sleep-deprived, saw a flicker of movement on his radar. Nothing. A ghostly reflection, electromagnetic dust. But fear drove him to recklessness. He switched from passive to active targeting, flooding the entire command post with high-frequency pulses. His screen emitted false echoes, hundreds of ghostly communications dancing across the screen. He panicked and launched 2 3,000,009 M96E missiles into the fog and destroyed a $50 Ukrainian dummy transmitter hidden under a bridge. The explosion tore a fireball 30 feet into the air, militarily pointless, psychologically disastrous. The illusion of control was gone. In seconds, chaos engulfed the convoy. Radios screamed, "Contact! Contact!" As drivers slammed on their brakes in panic. Trucks toppled like dominoes. 27 vehicles were crushed in the middle of the bridge. 34 soldiers died instantly, trapped in the warped steel and flames. The bridge became a fiery choke point, a perfect death zone. The SOVA-9 was undeterred. It adapted. The remaining 19 drones dove under the girders, disappearing into the radar darkness. One turned on its X-band jammer, emitting a 1.5 kilowatt pulse that crippled Russian radars within a 3-kilometer radius. The screen went white. The command sensors blinked. That failure marked a signal. At 4:45 a.m., a single word appeared on Kyiv's screen: executed. 11 drones soared at 220 miles per hour, slamming into the bridge's underside in 1.3 seconds. Their shaped-charge warheads detonated with 5,000 psi, enough to lift 12,000 tons of concrete from its foundation. The bridge didn't collapse, it just disintegrated. The next 5 drones targeted the center of the convoy, where 9 Chinese JY-27A radar vehicles were moving in formation. Each blast cut through the steel with surgical precision, small but deadly blasts, like a scalpel severing an artery. Then came the final chain reaction. The remaining 3 drones ignited 78,000 gallons of jet fuel. The resulting fireball was half a mile wide, vaporizing 250 trucks, crushing steel, and obliterating 10,000 military supplies. The explosion registered as a magnitude 2.8 earthquake on local seismic sensors. From the Kyiv command bunker, the SOVA-9 heat signature exploded red. Target grid saturation reached 100%. The entire middle section of the bridge, more than 400 meters long, was a raging fire. Caught between the flames, Russian and Chinese soldiers screamed into their broken radios. Some jumped into the freezing water, others just stood there, numbed by the light and heat. And in the calm voice of an operator, transmitted through static, the final words rang out: "The objective is complete. The structure will collapse in 20 seconds." The Dnipro bridge groaned, twisted, and began to die. You think the explosion was the end? It wasn't. What happened next turned a battlefield victory into a global political earthquake. Watch, you have to. The explosion over the Dnipro River didn't just destroy a bridge, it ripped open the silence of 2 capitals. At 4:45 a.m., seismic sensors in both Moscow and Beijing registered the blast as a 2.9 magnitude tremor, equivalent to the detonation of 1,500 tons of TNT. Within seconds, satellite networks, intelligence grids, and diplomatic hotlines across 3 continents came alive. In Moscow, chaos replaced certainty. The Russian National Defense Control Center lost contact with the entire convoy. 2 S-400 launchers, 3 Krasuka-4 jammers, and 248 diplomatic trucks simply vanished from radar. Screens flickered, showing only a plume of thermal energy spreading across the Dnipro, a fire signature larger than 2 football fields. General Petrov barked orders, demanding reconnaissance, but the nearest Su-34 strike aircraft couldn't even approach. The heat column was too intense for infrared sensors to function. In Beijing, the news hit like a hammer. The convoy's loss represented $1.4 billion in humanitarian cargo, secretly registered under the Ministry of State Security's offshore logistics front, Shenlong Energy Development. For the Chinese Foreign Ministry, it was humiliation. State media immediately cut programming and replaced it with patriotic music. By 5 a.m., the story officially became a mechanical failure on a Ukrainian bridge. But raw satellite footage from American NOAA-22 had already leaked, showing the convoy's destruction in crystal clarity. Meanwhile, social media across Asia erupted. Thousands of Chinese users noticed the sudden disappearance of engineers affiliated with the Red Eagle project, a joint research initiative between Russia and China to build long-range autonomous strike drones. At least 16 Chinese military scientists were confirmed dead, among them Dr. Liang Yusheng, Beijing's top radar systems architect. Back in Moscow, the Kremlin scrambled to react. The foreign minister demanded an emergency session of the UN Security Council, accusing Ukraine of attacking diplomatic property. Yet behind closed doors, Russian generals admitted the convoy's destruction had crippled their southern front. They had lost 72 hours worth of ammunition and their only digital command relay to the Zaporizhzhia sector. As dawn broke, the smoke above the Dnipro rose higher than the clouds, a black scar visible from 40 miles away. The bridge was gone. The alliance was bleeding. And for the first time, both Moscow and Beijing realized something unthinkable. Their partnership had just gone up in flames. At 6 a.m. Eastern Time, the Situation Room beneath the White House came alive. A satellite feed from Europe played on the central display. The Kryvyi Rih Bridge, once a proud span of steel and concrete, now a 1.2-mile scar of twisted rebar and fire. The image froze for a moment, then zoomed in. There were no survivors, no vehicles, no trace of the convoy that had cost over $1.4 billion to assemble. Defense analysts spoke in numbers that stunned the room. The strike had neutralized 250 trucks, 16 high-ranking Chinese and Russian engineers, and over 90 tons of advanced microchips destined for Russian missile systems. In one operation costing less than $20,000, Ukraine had erased a joint project that took 5 years and 2 superpowers to build. Across the table, the U.S. Secretary of Defense leaned forward, his voice steady. "Gentlemen, the message is clear. Intelligence beats intimidation." Reports from NATO confirmed the impact was spreading fast. Russian supply chains south of the Dnipro had collapsed. Chinese cargo flights to Moscow were suddenly rerouted. Even the Kremlin's state television quietly reduced its coverage of the special partnership. For Ukraine, the operation had become more than a military victory. It was psychological dominance. A nation once underestimated had used 20 autonomous drones to dismantle the illusion of invincibility. The president watched in silence as the screen replayed the collapse frame by frame. Finally, he spoke, softly, almost to himself. "Steel burns. Empires fall, but precision endures." Then, turning toward the camera, the narrator's voice returned, calm and deliberate. "Would you call this a defense, or the beginning of a new kind of war? Comment your answer below." By sunrise, the smoke above the Dnipro had thinned into a pale gray haze, drifting eastward toward the Russian border. The bridge that once symbolized trade, diplomacy, and trust now lay at the bottom of the river, a jagged tomb for hundreds of soldiers, engineers, and diplomats who had believed that politics could shield them from physics. In the aftermath, the world began to take sides. Beijing remained silent for 2 days, then released a single statement calling it a tragic transportation accident. Moscow accused Kiev of violating international law, while secretly evacuating what remained of its southern front. But behind every official word was the same unspoken truth. The China-Russia alliance had been broken not by weapons of mass destruction, but by 20 drones smaller than a hawk. At NATO headquarters in Brussels, military analysts called it the most efficient strike of the decade, an operation that cost less than a single tank round, yet delivered the strategic equivalent of a nuclear detonation. For the United States, it was proof that the age of giants was ending, replaced by an era where data, AI, and precision ruled the battlefield. And in Ukraine, as dawn reached the battered city of Kryvyi Rih, soldiers stood on the riverbank, watching the last embers fade beneath the waves. They didn't cheer. They didn't celebrate. They simply knew the message had been received. Across oceans, across continents, and deep within the hearts of those who once thought themselves untouchable. Because in modern war, victory no longer belongs to the side with the loud. Share and subscribe to the channel icon so you never miss the next unfolding conflict.